Say, can you see by the dawn's early light, once so proudly we hailed, and the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming.
As you probably know, Veterans Day first began as Armistice Day at the end of what was at the time called the Great War. We now call it the First World War. And it has since turned into a day of recognition for those who've served the country in uniform. It is a holiday which is not quite like other holidays in the way that it's celebrated. As I discovered in 1993, I had just been honorably discharged for a year. I was in the Army for 14 years, 3 months, 23 days, and I opened my morning Chicago Tribune before I went to work on Veterans Day. And here's the column that I read by the great Mike Royko, who was also a veteran of the Air Force, 52 to 55. I just phoned 6 friends and asked them what they will be doing on Monday. They all said the same thing. Working. Me too. There is something else we share. We're all military veterans. And there is a third thing we have in common. We're not employees of the federal government, state government, county government, municipal government, the postal service, the courts, banks, or SNLs, and we don't teach school. If we did, we would be among the many millions of people who will spend Monday goofing off. Which is why, is it about time Congress revised the ridiculous terms of Veterans Day as a national holiday. The purpose of Veterans Day is to honor all veterans. So how does this country honor them? By letting the veterans, the majority of whom work in the private sector, spend the day at their jobs so they can pay taxes that permit millions of non-veterans to get paid for doing nothing. Of course, that's a raw deal. So I propose that the members of Congress revise Veterans Day to provide the following. All veterans, and only veterans, should have the day off from work. It doesn't matter if they were combat heroes or stateside clerk typists. Anyone who went through basic training and was awakened before dawn by a redneck drill sergeant who bellowed, "Grab your socks and fall out on the road," is entitled. Those veterans who wish to march in parades, make speeches, or listen to speeches can do so. But those who don't, all gambling laws should be suspended for the day to permit vets to gather in taverns, pull together a couple of tables, and spend the day playing poker, blackjack, craps, drinking, and telling lies. All bar prices should be rolled back to enlisted men's club prices. Officers can pay the going rate, those stiffs. It will be a treasonable offense for any spouse or live-in girlfriend or boyfriend to utter the dreaded words, "What time will you be home tonight?" Anyone caught posing as a veteran will be required to eat a triple portion of chipped beef on toast with Spam on the side. Regardless of how high his office, no politician who had the opportunity to serve in the military but didn't will be allowed to make a patriotic speech, appear on TV, or poke his nose out of his office for the entire day. Now deal the cards and pass the tequila.
Just an honor for County College of Morris to be able to host this event today, because it is one of our outward ways of saying thank you to our veterans, to the men and women who are in our armed forces. And we hear the phrase often that we are the land of the free because of the brave. And today we're fortunate enough to have many of those individuals who are the brave, who allow us to live freely, who allow us to live in the best country in the world with us. So this program is for you. Please know that. There's a number of things that CCM does to support its veterans. We have programs for our students who are veterans. We also have a community veterans committee. If you're interested in working with us on that, please see me or the individual I'll be introducing afterward as well. But we do want our veterans to know throughout Morris County and the entire region how appreciative we are for what you have done for all of us. A couple individuals who couldn't be here today, one of which is Senator Bucco, and asked a schedule conflict and intended to be here, but asked that I share some words from him of appreciation and his acknowledgement of your service and what that means to our country. I assured him I would do so. I know that you're always close to his heart. You know how active he and his father have been in supporting veterans over the years.
What's becoming a veteran? What's the future for the American veteran? How will he be looked upon? And yes, how will we take care of him? And I use the word take care. I mean, will his benefits be there? Will other things be there? Before we pass the torch, will the government spending on different areas, will it be diverted to other areas and other causes? Will the future generations realize that there were boys at one time, and I say boys because a lot of us were boys, and wrote a blank check to America and put their life on hold to serve, not knowing if they would return? How will the past wars and conflicts be thought of in the classrooms, if at all? Will this subject be too uncomfortable for some or too uncomfortable to teach? I love my flag and my country. Today it seems that people don't love it as much as I do. And they want to promote their own causes and attack my flag. I've heard some talking heads on television say that my flag is just a piece of cloth. Well, to us veterans, it's more than just a piece of cloth. It's a symbol. It's a symbol of our service to our country. It's a symbol of our commitment to our brothers, both living and honored dead. It is a symbol of the sacrifices we made. It's a symbol of the sacrifices our families made. And it's a symbol of the country we love. In closing, 2.5 minutes, I know it's inevitable that the torch is passed to another generation. Hopefully, the next few generations will respect and honor the sacrifices of our veterans and not think of it as a burden on society or want to forget that wars even ever existed. Don't get the warriors confused with the war. God bless our veterans and God bless America.
On behalf of the students and the faculty of the County College of Morris, as well of the Student and Veteran Support Organization, we would like to present you with a plaque as a sign of gratitude and thank you for your great service that the students and faculty made this past week as well.
Seen by all, and all can appreciate the service that you have given this country.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. There's a slight change in the program, and that is that Ray Martinelli is on his way here. He's not yet here. And unfortunately, the Canine Companions for Independence were not able to make it. They had a mishap on the way here. We are going to get a lovely presentation about service dogs in the military and the great work that they perform, which is why we come to the next item in the program, which is, since dogs were being presented, I demanded equal time for another animal species which has been serving in the military for time immemorial. So therefore, I have this presentation for you, cats and more. I'm not talking about cats' high intelligence and their predilection for stratagem tactics, but rather for the ways that they have served our military at sea, on land, and in the air, actually through the centuries. And indeed, our story begins with the Roman legions, who, when they were on the march, carried great stores of grain and other agricultural products with them to feed their troops and their draft animals. And of course, these were vulnerable to vermin, mice, rats, squirrels, chipmunks. And so the Roman army actually took along with them cats to guard their stores. And Not only that, some of these cats, of course, became so popular with the Legionnaires that they became unit mascots. And we know that's not Photoshop because they didn't have Photoshop during the Roman Empire. But some cats recognize this tradition, and that's why you see them when you go to Italy and Greece, so many of them hanging around the ruins. I think it's in honor of their noble ancestors who served so wonderfully. We'll flash forward now a few hundred years, and it turns out that cats have been in naval service for a very long time as well. This picture is taken in the fjords of Norway, and that's because the first naval force we have on record that carried cats with them regularly were the Vikings. Now, the Vikings carried cats with them for exactly the same reason. Aboard their longships, they had stores that they wanted to protect from the local vermin. They were always putting in on their raids and at settlements and things like that, and they needed to protect their ships and protect their stores. So they had these cats along with them. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. A couple of biologists did a DNA mapping about 3 years ago, and they discovered that it was actually Vikings who spread cats through Western Europe and through North America. If you have a house cat nowadays, it's likely genetically traced back to 1 or 2 Viking settlements on the Baltic coast of Germany. So if you have a cat, thank a Viking. Flash forward a few more hundred years. Cats continued to serve in naval services, again aboard various ships. This one is from the Royal Navy, and you can see that the cats were not just catching mice; they were rather pampered. They made a little hammock for this one. But these ship cats were actually members of the crew, and they were listed on the crew's roster. And they had a rating. And all sailors, everyone in the Navy knows a sailor has a rating. They're a fireman, they're a gunner's mate, they're a bosun. Cats had the rating of mouser. And if there was more than one mouser aboard ship, that cat was designated the chief mouser. And here's the most famous chief mouser of them all. His name is Blackie. He's aboard Her Majesty's ship, the battleship Prince of Wales, and that is in fact Prime Minister Winston Churchill petting Blackie, because Blackie was trying to follow him across the gangplank in August of 1941 to meet Franklin Roosevelt aboard a U.S. naval vessel. So he's a very storied cat in the Royal Navy. All right, we're going to flash back now a little to the Great War. Some of you know that in World War I there was trench warfare, which had some very difficult conditions. There were a lot of vermin, rats and mice in the trenches. And so once again, cats were recruited to bring to the front. This is a French truck driver who's bringing a couple of cats up to the trenches. And there's one of our American doughboys over there in 1918 with a wonderful looking tabby cat sitting up on the firing step of the trench. It is estimated that 500,000 cats served in World War I. Now, in World War II, well, wait, that picture there, yeah. Officers, right? He's putting a kitten on top of a little artillery shell that he's smoking next to. You have to wonder how our side won the war. World War II, there was better storage and better transportation, and so the role of cats changed really from being a guardian of the stores or a guardian of the trenches to being a unit mascot and an emotional support animal, as you can see here, picture from the U.S. Army and also from the German Army. However, there was still a role for cats, a service role for cats in the Red Army. This is a picture from the siege of Stalingrad where a cat actually has a message attached to its collar and it's supposed to go back to headquarters. Anyone who owns cats, you gotta wonder, how on earth did they train cats to do that? Because I can't get my cat to come from one room to another, right? Once we get to the Korean War, as well as the war in Vietnam, you can see that the role of an emotional support animal remained for cats, providing comfort for troops and a distraction from really some of the terrible conditions or terrible experiences that they had. And they maintained this role both in Afghanistan and in Iraq. And so that was a very special kind of veteran that I wanted to introduce you to. And we wish the cats who are in the military well as remember those who have served. Although some cats who have been in the military have a question.
Great to see you here. Vice President Marlin, thank you very much for the kind invitation. He shared with me before the program that I've been following him around. We've been a year apart as a 1978 graduate of West Point, so it's good to see you as well. What I thought I might do is talk a little bit as we think about building community, and I love the fact that education is what has drawn us together today specifically, as well as the Veterans Day, and I appreciate all the great support that this institution provides. So I thought I'd maybe share a little bit about some thoughts about education, talk a little bit about the West Point faculty. It's a different kind of model when we send company grade officers after they're about 6 or 7 years in the operational force into graduate school before they come and teach. So that's a little bit different. I thought I'd share that. And then what I'd like to also do is share why you want veterans in your classroom and what they bring to the classroom, what they bring to your institution, what they bring to a learning community. And I'll just say out front, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what this institution does, because when you think about the cornerstone of a healthy democracy, it's a mutual trust between the military and the society it serves. So I really appreciate the connections and the bonds that are formed here, which is so important for society to prosper going forward. Let me start talking a little bit about education. In my view, education is not the acquisition of information. Education is about synthesizing information. It's about critical thinking. It's about working collaboratively. It's about learning about different cultures, right? It's about learning about yourself. It's transformative in nature. Martin Luther King had shared that it's intelligence and character, not just intelligence, but intelligence and character that is truly education. Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked about how education is fundamental to a healthy democracy. It truly is transformative on the individual level, on the organizational level, and on the community level. John Dewey, a 19th century philosopher, said, "I believe that education must be conceived as a continuing reconstruction of experience, that the process and the goal of education are one and the same thing." You can find this quote in a book that's on the New York Times list, but it's called Educated, a Memoir, and truly, again, a story of transformation. And I see this transformation at West Point in our cadets, and I particularly, as I mentioned, want to talk about the 55% of our faculty who rotate through. So at the 6 or 7 year mark, we take them out of the company command, usually position, send them to the best graduate school programs in the country, and then they come back and they teach and they mentor, they deepen their own studies, and they have a phenomenal impact on our cadets. So let me talk about that in a little bit here. So at West Point, we have a physical program, we have a military program, we have a specific character program, and of course an academic program. So the faculty, it's through the academic program primarily, have an impact on the development of those cadets. We have a broad liberal education, so 50% social sciences and humanities, and 50% math, science, and engineering, as well as a battery of about 36 different majors. So very robust. Small classes, so eyeball to eyeball, there's nowhere to hide in the classroom. And cadets learn what it means to stake out a position, bring evidence to bear, to learn and listen, like, to different perspectives, to have civil discourse, and to go after the ideas hard, not after the people. Very impactful inside the classroom. Outside the classroom, faculty are engaged with cadets in their sports, in their clubs, in all kinds of extracurricular moments, which is really impactful when you think about those informal engagements with role models interacting with cadets. I will also share with you that it's not just the 55% that do this. We have 27% civilian faculty who are great mentors for those military in the scholarly ways, as well as long-term military folks like myself. Let me talk a little bit, though, what happens when we take that service member, that military faculty member on their way in preparation for their time on faculty into the graduate school classroom, it's really been a phenomenal opportunity to deepen that civilian-military relationship. It's also been the fact that they've been great examples in the classroom. They bring diverse views, they bring life experience. And it's very important that that flavor of our faculty, this is the untold story of West Point, when they have that opportunity to think deeply and reflect and work on their own scholarship and come and teach and mentor when they go back out and serve with the cadets they just taught. That's a valuable level of talent we give back to the operational Army at that what we call field grade level. It's very, very impactful. This is not unique though in terms of the West Point officer faculty, because it is also what you see here, the service members and veterans who bring that to the classroom as well and enhance not just the classroom, but enhance the institution. I can see that here, as well as the learning community. And what do veterans and service members bring? They bring character, they bring capability, and they bring community. We think about character, and at West Point, our mission is all about developing leaders of character. We're talking about the values that really define who you are. And when we think about the service members and the veterans, they're bringing with them those professional values that have made them who they are. And when I talk about professional values, I'm talking about things like integrity and honor and teamwork and discipline and resolve and humility and confidence, all those things that are really the cornerstone of the profession, because the way the military operates in a very decentralized manner, and the only way you can operate in a decentralized manner is when you have trust. And it's really those values that foster that kind of trust. Not only do they bring that character, they bring capability. So veterans and service members have learned how to learn. They've learned to adapt. They embrace change. They bring diverse views. They're good problem solvers. Such great skill sets that they bring, as well as that life experience in terms of capability. And finally, that sense of community, right? Nobody stands alone. Teamwork is instinctive. They build teams, they provide cohesion to any group, which you saw demonstrated just a few moments ago. Veterans know the power of teams, of community, of relationships. And all of that, when veterans are integrated throughout institutions and society and so forth, everybody benefits. Everyone is educated. And it reminds me, not too far from West Point, when we think about the power of that community, not too far from West Point is Hyde Park. And Hyde Park is the home of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he saw the power of community early on in his life. And you can see it in everything that he did, to include the famous fireside chats that brought community across the nation. And he said, quote, "If civilization is to survive, we must cultivate the science of human relationships, the ability of all peoples of all kinds to live together in the same world at peace." So I just want to thank this great institution, the organizers, I think I might have missed Ms. McCardle earlier, who brought us all together, this community of all diverse backgrounds and experiences, veterans, civilians, service members. And I want to tell you that there's nothing like it, and that's how we get stronger and stronger as a society, as a country, and within our own communities. And I want to let you know that it's really an honor to be here, and I salute you, what you're doing here in Morris, as I salute the men and women at West Point on the banks of the Hudson. Thank you.
Would all who served in uniform or who are currently serving in uniform please rise and be recognized? Why we applaud you, celebrate you, indeed salute you today. It's because those who put on the uniform are making great sacrifices so that the rest of us can be safe, and the rest of us can be free. Those sacrifices are sometimes very, very great. It's not just being woken up early in the morning by a drill sergeant telling you to get on the road. It's putting your life on the line. It's enduring hardship. It's enduring pain. It's suffering. It's sometimes the after effects of suffering that go long into civilian life once people have separated from the service. Well, I'm going to read you a short poem about that. As I mentioned before, Veterans Day originated as Armistice Day at the end of the Great War. And the Great War produced a lot of really poignant poetry about what it was like to be a soldier in combat at that time. The greatest of these was Wilfred Owen, and I'm going to read one of his poems here. Bent double, like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and toward our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf, even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas? Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering, like a man in fire or lime. Dimmed through the misty panes and thick green light as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams, you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil's sick of sin. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gurgling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. Wilfred Owen was killed in action at the Sombrerouge Canal on November 4th, 1918, 1 week before the armistice. May we all together observe a moment of silence for the fallen. And now the County of College Chamber Choir will celebrate our veterans with
This opportunity. It gives us the true feeling of respect and love for our country and for giving us this opportunity.
My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's bride, from every mountain side, let freedom ring. My native country be, land of the free, thy My heart with passion thrills like oh, beautiful for spacious skies, forever waves of rain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea, shining sea, from sea to shining sea of America. If tomorrow the things are gone, I've worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, but the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And we stand up next to you and defend your still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea.
From Detroit down to Houston, and New York to LA, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, stand and say. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the man who died who gave that right to me. And I'm glad we stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Oh, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. To be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the man who died, who need that light too. And our family stand up next to you and defenders still today. Cause there ain't no doubt about this land. God bless the USA. God bless the USA.
General Jeb for her thoughtful and interesting remarks about what life is like nowadays at West Point. It reminded me some of my own cadet days, so thank you for the memories, as well as for your thoughts on really how veterans can well integrate into our world and into our classrooms. This concludes our formal portion of today's celebration. However, you are welcome to join us in the atrium for some refreshments.